And then the last gentleman.
I have two very short comments. As listed in your PP slides and in the abstract, you list the three settings you want to give moral argument. I think we should be very careful to the moral distinction between the three settings, because for the first one, if you want to justify the patients in the first group should be the euthanasia is justified, but you just in these settings you just justify the right to choose death. But the rest, the second and the third, if you give justification, it's just justify the right to choose a way of death. I think we should be very careful to the moral distinction between them. And the other one is when Japanese culture and Chinese culture have the same root, from Confucianism, but it's a very different idea and viewpoint from Western culture. Individual or self is not the focus of moral concern in Confucian tradition. Self is just as a reference, to extend your care and to the virtue to other people and to take moral duty. It's the focus of Confucian tradition. So when we try to re-examine the arguments regarding euthanasia in Western culture, in Western context, I think we should be more careful. Yeah, that's my comment. Thank you.
So far as women is concerned, particularly, a lot of sensitization need to be done. At the same time, the consent which emanates out of women, I don't believe in a singularly autonomous consent, but it will be either family-oriented or community-oriented decision, which is imposed upon her. On certain issues, you will find women taking the dominant position and even prompting others to take certain decisions. Therefore, it's really a very, very complex issue where she exercises her autonomy in the case of her own termination of the life or so on, or giving consent for her own child's life and so on. Really, this issue requires a lot of inputs, society-oriented approach to this. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation and the questions. We come to the end of session 9. I think we had interesting, a number of papers looking at a holistic view of bioethics and ethical questions and its relation to culture through historical lens and social lenses. I'll give you several announcements before we stop for lunch. We still don't have the consent form from many people. We're talking about consent. We're giving you a chance to express consent. We'd like you to have your consent. We're already taking photographs and videos from the beginning, but we'd like to have your consent. The form is on the registration desk. For those who haven't checked already the participants list, we're going to, it's outside on the table, do copies, mark, and tick your name if you're correct, and mark any changes, because we will post it on the web afterwards. We have the Asian Bioethics Association membership forms on the back desk, and we're also people who want to be country representatives of the Asian Bioethics Association. Please come to see me at the lunchtime, so that in our general meeting on Thursday we are up to date with who is a country representative. Now we have also, there's an announcement in the abstract book about submitting papers. We would like to publish the papers. Many of you have very long papers already. We it might give you a chance to revise that and please submit. And also PowerPoint files, if you are open to having those shared, then please, it is our intention to, I think, share the PowerPoint files on the web. And if you have some objection to this or want to change something, please tell us. I think that's all. So we start exactly 1 hour from now because we have a very tough afternoon schedule. And the cultural evening is tonight. There's a sign-up list for dances, acts, songs, whatever you're going to suggest. So please write that on the list so that we have an idea who is interested in doing what. Okay, thank you very much. Lunch is served on the left, the same floor. Thank you.
Times this question. So Jürgen Simon answers, because it is important to compare the different point of view in the light of the cultural background. This is exactly what we had tried to do a few days ago in our workshop from the IISA in Bangkok. In this workshop, Sora Chungadaru had briefly presented a first draft of a paper in which he showed that the differences between the ancient Asian and the modern Western idea of privacy were not so far away. The discussion about the participation of patients and donors in large collections and of human biological samples, ancient data, clinical trials and pandemics, the paradigm of privacy becomes again a very prominent position in the Western civil society, especially in relation to the terms of law, bioethics, biomedical law, biomedical ethics. The right of privacy can be seen as a result of the differentiation of the societies in the 19th century, the time in which in Europe the civil society was established. This trend was established in the industrialized society as a result and instrument of differentiation. Now we are living in a postmodern society, and the connotation and the value of the term right of privacy has changed. We can observe that we are losing or giving up the right of privacy without any control to third parties or observers. Thus, privacy becomes an old-fashioned paradigm, or is there a need, a focus again on its importance and value for the civil society? The fear in the discussion of protecting the human genome or the patient's data shows that there must be something behind the right of privacy and data protection which shows its function for society. Why it is important? Why is this so important for Western societies? Or is it only on old-fashioned paradigm I just mentioned it? It is really important for Asian society, or is the connotation of the term privacy in the light of the cultural background and the different? It is only a vehicle for lawmakers to increase the numbers of professional law professionals or ethicists. Has the right of privacy and data protection another status and function in Asian societies? It really differs from the European position. The discussion on this topic needs a more elaborate structured discussion, taking the different social cultural backgrounds into account. It seems not helpful to have everything on the same level. In the following section, we try to show briefly some aspects of this problem. I feel responsible for my panel and the audience. Therefore, I don't present the paper by myself, and I will let the time for the discussion by the members of the panel and the audience. The first speaker is now Jürgen Simon with his presentation, Privacy as a Human Territory, a German Perspective.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The first question is privacy dead? That is a provoking title of a commentary by Frank Levitt in Eubios 2001. Now is our session on privacy a repeated attempt to bury it? I do not think so. On the contrary, privacy is en vogue. For example, the German Constitutional Court recently had to rule on the question whether a father is allowed to conduct a genetic test on his paternity without asking his child or the mother by sending some biological material to a private research institute. The court denied the right to the test with regard to the personality right of both child and mother. Their privacy sphere could be hurt, so we can find out that with genetic testing now easily conducted with low costs in non-medical domains, a variety of privacy issues must be considered. Another case we find some 20 years ago, also decided by the German Federal Constitutional Court, and this is the fundamental decision in Germany on this subject. In 1983, the court issued a groundbreaking judgment for data collection of the population in the course of a national census. It initially asserted that the fear of the population of uncontrollable data collection is a serious factor which must be considered by the government. Beyond that, the court expressed explicitly in its so-called theory of spheres that all citizens are to be protected in their three spheres of intimate, private, and public or social life. However, the most intensive protection must be applied to the intimacy sphere. The least protection applies to the sphere in which the citizen acts in public. But even there, the citizen is worthy of protection. He may not be photographed in public, and data may not be collected. In each of these spheres, the citizen reveals more or less voluntarily information. To his physician, his bank, the credit investigation office, the police, the tax office, the observation or monitoring cameras in road traffic, in railway stations or any other potentially dangerous place, the military, the welfare office, the municipal authorities, just to name a few. All this information is more or less worth protecting by the physician's obligation to confidentiality, by the bank's duty to maintain confidentiality, by the Secrecy Act for Social Affairs, and so on. This means that this information shall be protected by strong barriers against external influences and against others. The transmission of information may only happen within the scope of law. This means also that there must be a legal guideline for everyone, measured by the protection of the German Constitution. For example, the granted protection of personal rights or human dignity according to Article 1 or Article 2 of the German Constitution. According to the corresponding law in Germany, a physician may pass his information to the health insurance, the police or the public prosecutor's office. However, the following is crucially important. The data are not allowed to be passed on beyond this closely limited range. The firewalls between the single areas of data collection may not be torn down in any case. And more, this is the problem today, the total visibility, the transparent citizen. Now let us remember our introduction, is privacy dead? No, we can realize by the court decisions that it is alive, but why it is so important that it is a core subject of not only decisions of the German Federal Constitutional Court. Going some steps in depth into the science of animals as well as of human beings, we find the topic territory. Each species of animals has its own and different territory. Moreover, all human beings have an instinctive feeling of flight distance or critical distance. Edward T. Hall describes this in his classic book, The Hidden Dimension, and I think he was the first one to transfer this animal model to human beings. Regarding human beings, the feeling of territory is very differentiated in different nations, societies, or even in social classes. How the Germans, for example, organize their private sphere with a sense of order, and we started very punctually today, we can see, it's a German. And hierarchy is different to the Americans who are following Edward T. Hall himself as an American, very pushy. So we realize that that intimacy, private and social public sphere are necessary for animals and human beings as well, although in a very different manner. It is one of the basic points, and this is the reason why the German Federal Constitutional Court adopts Hall's sphere theory by neglecting the social sphere and putting it together with the public one. It seems that the court leaves the definition of territory in its dimensions at that, but it is simultaneously transforming it in immaterial contents. We can see that the inner region of human beings, now more and more explored and object of commodification, is an essential part of the intimacy sphere and in general to be protected. That regards also the biological or genetic data, and insofar biomedical material and data concern the core sphere of the human being, his intimacy sphere. These genetic data have to be more intensively protected following the territory arguments than, for example, credit data, because they are touching the substance of the human being even more. So far we have in short described the German, European and the more and more global background and the necessity of privacy protection, but the question is if this concept is a realistic one. Perhaps it is both. As Germany's most prominent data protection committee says, the data protection laws try to protect the citizen, and simultaneously they have to allow the data flow on data streets, in data motorways, sometimes restricted but mostly open for traffic, and all the containers full of material and data. And the new developments of biobanking are intersections in biomedical traffic. The question is if the highly praised instruments of privacy law with its individual rights and administrative regulations are actually qualified at all to protect citizens. Perhaps the citizen gives up his privacy sphere in general, and data protection is nowadays only significant for those 3 or 5% of people who like the opera and eat biological food or go to their psychologist. I will give you some examples of new developments. For one, look at cyberspace. People like bloggers lay down their most intimate data in internet for all interested parties, or YouTube. Think of the millions of client cards people give their data for next to nothing, or actually for nothing. And think of the cookies in the internet reaching into the private sphere. And everybody knows about that and uses it nevertheless. In short, we can see that what private persons do not give freely, the industry or others will get anyway. For example, German enterprises like Lufthansa send their passengers list to the United States government for controlling purposes. States collect and make use of billions of data for public health services, criminal investigations, like raster investigations in Germany since the early 80s, especially against the so-called Red Army faction. Millions of video cameras, especially in the UK, the systematic screening of private phone calls from the US, by the US from UK and all over Europe, investigations in biobanks, the last one in Sweden, and possible all over the world, and more and more. As my examples show, you may find this phenomenon not only nation but worldwide. So we can see that global technical and social developments lead to essential changes in the private sphere. As Jeremy Rifkin says, the crucial point is to be in the net. I would add, to be in the net or not to be. Access is everything. From me to others and vice versa. And this is the revolutionary change of the last years. The principle of data exchange on data highways, its commodification and partly helpless governmental trials to control this process. As a result of this development, the firewalls between the respective intimate or private spheres have been broken partly. The result is also that they have been overlapped by far-reaching new developments, and the law is less than ever able to understand these processes and to draw conclusions from that. But in any case, we have to realize again what our flight or critical distance is now, and if we really still need to have one. So I'm not able to give you any new theory. I can only make you aware of these changes. But perhaps the more privacy is en vogue, the more this old lady vanishes. Thank you very much.
Sehr Thank you very much for your last presentation. I would like to announce the next presentation. It's Professor Manua from India. It's got the new file
much I enjoy the concepts. What I like to ask is that although it might be the issue of privacy might be some kind of old-fashioned or not really so important. It is important, but actually people are getting information of different ways, either from the internet or owned by the government. But still, once the biodata is collected, and it might be used in a very powerful way. For example, it might be linked to the household data, it might be linked to the crime data or other things. So there is still this possibility that the abuse of such data and privacy issues seems to be paramount. And for the purpose of protecting very intimate spheres of person, individuals, don't you think it is still a very important issue to be discussed?
Well, I think it's a very important question, and my lecture was more or less in general. And you have a very special question: how to protect this area and how to have the possibility of data traffic. So I think it depends from the cultural perspectives of the nations, the special nation. And so we should discuss before this background of your nation. It's not a general perspective I give. You have to have your own laws and your own protection, and it's, I think, not possible to transfer the European dimensions to other countries.
But yes, I get your point. But my point is that, don't you think this personal, even this very individual things in a collective society still remain something could be recognized as a universal value? If certain country they don't respect such domain, and there could be a general discussion or even international guideline to remind them that this is an important issue. You are collecting data just like other countries, but you, at the same time, you must remember even your own people do not really claim to inquire such rights, but there's still this issue to be reminded for the government even to the special country. That's my point. Thank you.
So privacy has been defined as the desire of individuals for solitude, intimacy, anonymity, and reserve. Privacy is a right of natural person. The concept of privacy goes beyond so as to include kinship zone of the family. It is not individual specific. The zone of protection shall extend to the home correspondence with others. Article 19 of the UDHR 1948. Article 19 of ICCPR and Article 10 of the ECHR 1950 stipulate the protection. Since individual reputation and the sense of dignity are the core issues and concerns, the right to prevent the public disclosure of private facts about individuals relies upon the use or abuse of personal information. Of course, many scholars have brought in theories, and most of these theories interchangeably between the systems applied in the internal or domestic sphere to affirm or support their own concepts of right to privacy. The common law maxim, every man's home is his castle, is largely followed in India. And in Correct Singh versus State of UP, wherein the Supreme Court lays down the the fundamental principle of right to privacy in India. Of course, it relates to the nocturnal visit. In the midnight, people come and knock the door whether the person is available or not. That's why we have borrowed this, the Supreme Court has borrowed this concept or maxim from common law and applied, and it has been expanded today to every sphere of life under Article 21. In India, this case, followed by this case, and we have several personal life-oriented issues and right to life as a life to be added with, super added with a dignity, has been surrounded by this concept. And we also find in one case, Nirmala's case, a woman in human rights sensitization context at Chandigarh, she wanted to rent her room to support her family. It is an example of violation of rights because it was publicized much, and that has attracted the adverse criticism and so on. And she sued the person, the media, and so on, wherein it was held that it is her privacy that has been offended. Because her motive for renting her room is for certain fair purposes according to her. It is like consenting to free experimental therapy, something that a lot of patients with rare diseases often do. Her complaint was that the media has blown out of proportion, thus defaming her, hence violated her right to privacy. Laws governing medical researchers are clear that they have a fundamental right to protection against the possible victims. No one has such a license under law. Women subject to a decision for abortion is entitled to full information prior to her decision. Women's perceived reproductive choice was limited in certain systems. The court affirmed a woman's constitutional information gathering protection to the particular pregnancy. The court by this extended the woman's privacy right beyond pregnancy-specific experimentation. The decision to her is private to her. Indian courts often think in terms of the rationale and logic applied by the US Supreme Court as well as United Kingdom's common law principles. The right to procreative privacy was interfered with a married individual's right to privacy. This concept inherent in the amendments brought in the United States Constitution is much quoted in India's constitutional jurisprudence. In another landmark decision, Supreme Court applying Rizal versus Connecticut, which is considered to be one of the landmark cases of the right to privacy element. And they have applied very widely and largely to give strength to the right to privacy in Indian context. In respect of human experimentation and transplantation, particularly in fetal experimentation, deriving general principles seems to be too difficult. Different approaches prevail in various legal systems, as I mentioned earlier, even on the continent of Europe. The whole aspect of fetal segment of research lies in UK under professional ethics, while in US it is an issue subject to constitutional analysis. In India, the subject relates to permissible contours which are regulated on the ground of health of the motherhood. It is with the other requirement of valid informed consent. The Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act is one such important piece of legislation which, while gave a protective regime governing the termination of pregnancies, properly called an empowering piece of legislation on the part of government. No doubt the doctor's certification for the decision to terminate is the most valuable factor in this regard. Here, as has been the practice in the UK, professional ethics of the doctors rule professional ethics in the context of India is broadly brought in respect of nature, and all forms of life is brought under this, and respect for religion, religious practices and traditions, above all, non-commodification of the human body, and Respect for the dead is also mentioned. These facets are many more and could be seen found in Article 51A under the title Fundamental Duties. In 1993, a special task force on human genetics was initiated to go into the area of biotechnology-related issues. And the thrust of Indian effort is to utilize the emerging information for therapeutic purposes and also to understand the genome diversity of Indian population. There has been a legislative prospect in various areas addressing issues relating to biomedical technology and in health delivery system. The Transplantation of Human Organs Act 1994 and the Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Regulation and Prevention of Misuses Act 1994 were enacted. These have incorporated India's intrinsic values. Indian transplantation law addresses major issues relating to organ transplantation, prohibition of trade, protection of donors' rights, etc. The other act also provided an equitable sense of justice brought to the victims concerned. Actually, an equitable and balanced provision which was being brought in by these two acts could be seen in their function. That means, in recent times, we have seen large-scale misuse of uncontrolled activities of organ stealing when they go in for medical treatment. And number of children were lost and the traces could not be found, and later on there was widespread scandal that these children were kidnapped for the purpose of getting organs from them. It is still under investigation. And this has led for the total ban on all kinds of tests aimed at even detecting sex of the prenatal diagnostic aspect. Coming to the biogenetics and biomedical technology which involve intrusion of privacy of individuals, they have enormous potential of predictability, maneuverability, and curability to the humankind for right use. In respect of organs and tissue transplantation, we see the living persons and cadavers brought in through the living person as well as other related subjects. There was a large-scale demand for it, yet it has been abused much. The further question of biomedical ethics touches upon the fetal tissues, use of fetal tissues in transplantation, and of course it is a growing area so far as India is concerned, and not much has been done. The right to privacy being a precious right in most of these practices, where innocent subjects are normally the victims, compensatory regime should be strengthened. In cases where the doctors fail in professional judgments, the Consumer Protection Act comes into and try to provide remedy. Medical negligence in terms of failure to take proper professional care or duty of care or deficiency of services are found to be handy for those who seek remedy under compensatory jurisprudence. Particularly to mention as a core issue in Indian Constitution, we find Article 21 read along with the preamble goes and establishes the principle of right to dignity of any individual, and right to life is not merely a vegetative life but super added value with the life of dignity. Therefore, Article 21 being expanded to cover all aspects of human dignity, the right to privacy and confidentiality of individuals have been so much protective under the Indian jurisprudence. Thank you.
Professor Manoa, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. We will come now to another presentation, European Standards on Confidentiality and Privacy in the Healthcare. Colin, you have the floor. In the meantime, one question to, if you have a question to Professor Manoa. Somebody question?
Chair, great pleasure and honour to be here and have this opportunity to speak to you. And I appreciate very much that I can use English. I wouldn't take that for granted within Europe, and I certainly wouldn't take it for granted here. So I hope my accent isn't too strong. A few years ago, I was discussing with an African friend political corruption in his country and in my country. And offhandedly, I said to him about the two continents. And as soon as I said the two continents, he immediately said, Colin, Europe isn't a continent, it is a peninsula which sticks off Asia. And I always call this comment to mind whenever I'm tempted too quickly perhaps to compare Europe to other areas or regions of the world. So I'm not going to compare, in any sense, European values and privacy to Asian values and privacy, whatever Asian values in that broad sense might be. What Europe is a matter of debate, great debate, and probably too much debate for people within Europe, both politicians and some citizens, but not as many citizens as I would like. And this can be seen in the two major European regional organisations. And these two organisations, as we'll see, have been important in giving shape to the right to privacy and confidentiality in the European context. The European Union has about 27 member states now. Just this year, 2 new states joined. It's about 457 million people, which obviously in Asian terms you can see how small that is. It tends to not, its impact is through hard law. European Union law becomes law of the member states quite directly. And so probably about 80% of the new laws created in the United Kingdom come from Europe rather than from the government of the United Kingdom. It's very much an economic entity. Its focus is on a single internal market. It's about freeing up trade and commerce between the member states. The Council of Europe is larger. It has 46 member states, so 20 more than the European Union. It's much larger, 800 million people, largely because Russia is a member, which of course immediately in itself questions what Europe means when you have Russia, and Russia still facing a centuries-old dilemma whether to look east or look west. The Council of Europe is involved much more in softer standards side, and it's very concerned with human rights. The European Court of Human Rights and the Convention on Human Rights stem from the Council of Europe. It sets standards for democracy, for judicial processes and so on. This is very broad. Outlining the differences, the relationship between the organisations, both historically and contemporarily, is quite complex. So, when it comes to European norms in the field of privacy and healthcare, really there's three overlapping areas. There's confidentiality, ethics and law at a national level. The ethics, of course, is the broad tradition of medical ethics, but also the professional ethics is defined by regulatory authorities who regulate the various health professions in the different countries within Europe. And then these different countries will have different legal traditions, civil traditions, legal or common law traditions, different notions of confidentiality as a legal obligation. Sometimes confidentiality is handled quite differently. Beside that then, there's human rights law, which largely stems from the Council of Europe in terms of the European region, but not exclusively. And then there's data protection law, which again, generally, but not exclusively, has its origin in the European Union. So the poor health professional who's trying to decide how to properly manage and handle patient information is faced with a wide array of legal obligations and ethical obligations coming from a wide range of sources, both national and international. Now, one of those international sources, of course, is the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights. And Article 9, I won't bother reading that out, I just want to draw your attention to, at the bottom it says, consistent with international law, in particular international human rights law. This is a key concern for European health professionals in European states about the relationship between professional obligations and human rights obligations. Increasingly within Europe, traditional medical ethics is expressed in terms of human rights law. Now, some people think that particularly human rights activists tend to want human rights law to subsume and overtake everything else. Healthcare professionals, particularly medical professionals, recognise the importance of ethics in a distinct tradition. But the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights does represent the coming together of these different historical strains of human values. Now, in the European context, the European Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms, the key one here is Article 8. So the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights within Europe will be interpreted very much in the light of this article of the European Convention. And I just want to stress 2 points about this. And the first one is that the right to privacy is put alongside the right to family life. It's quite clear in the judgments of the court that the right to privacy is not a right to isolation, or not a right to isolation alone. The right to privacy includes the right to form relationships. So the protection of a relationship between, say, a separated or divorced parent and a child, that's the right to privacy of the parent and child, the right to private life is engaged. And privacy is about the right to form relationships and maintain relationships, not just a right to avoid relationships or to live in isolation in some way. That's the first. And privacy is about our connection with others in European human rights law as much as it is about our separation or protection from others. There are certain limitations on this right, it's not absolute. The second clause makes clear these limitations, and you can see that things like national security, public safety, prevention of disorder or clinic, protection of health or morals, the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. All these concerns, all these public goods or common goods are understood at times that they can override in a proportionate way the right of the individual to a private life. So the human rights framework isn't individualistic. It protects the individual, but recognises that a right like this is limited and that there are genuine public goods or common goods which should override the right to individuals if it's done in accordance with the law and in a proportionate and balanced manner. Now, the EuroSOCAP project was a European Commission funded project, so it was funded by the European Union rather than the Council of Europe to look at a European level at privacy and confidentiality of patient information or healthcare information. This is a bit strange, this is how the European tends to work. The European Union has no competence for healthcare. It does for public health, but not for health. But that didn't stop the Commission funding, but it's basically a healthcare activity. So it's acting beyond its legal authority in doing so. But all it takes maybe 1 or 2 people with the European Commission decide they want to do something, and you can get around what all the national governments have agreed in the treaties. It had a particular focus on vulnerable patient groups. And the concern was that European citizens who are vulnerable to having their confidential healthcare information misused or abused, to make sure that those vulnerable citizens were protected by European standards in this area. And the project team consisted of about 18 healthcare professionals, legal experts and ethicists from 10 European states. So the project team was by no means totally representative of all the different or diversity of European Union countries, let alone the greater Europe countries. And the project was coordinated from Belfast, where I'm from, in the very far northwest of Europe, for a very small region. The standards went through a series of drafting, and I won't go through this in detail, but there was widely disseminated the internet and email. The draft was developed through a series of workshops held with the project team. And these were circulated very widely using the internet and email to about 600 stakeholders. There's an email list of about 600 people. Then we held a workshop in Brussels, where about 80 people attended. And each time we went through drafts. I think we went through 29 major revisions and 22 minor revisions. The final consultation was in October 2005, and then the standards were finalised in November 2005. Now, there were lots of areas, I don't have the time to go through all these, but these are the kind of areas where there was contentious issues between different European Union states. The extent to which there was a confidentiality obligation after death, whether or not breach of confidentiality is itself a criminal offence or a civil offence, law of consent. I think one ongoing one, including in the dissemination and take-up of the standards, is second from last, the public benefit of medical research versus the individual right to privacy. It's quite often framed in that way. Again, it's this common good against individual right, whereas our view of the standards is very much that confidentiality in itself a public good. We have a strong public interest in maintaining the confidentiality of healthcare information, and that's something which is in the human rights framework as much as it's in traditional medical ethics. Again, issues around the kinds of technology used in the healthcare service. But in different states, the issues are a bit different depending on their level of development. I won't talk about the content because time is short. I've left some copies at the back, some printed copies in English. They aim to make recommendations to institutions because good ethical practice takes place in a context. And there's no point in setting high standards for healthcare professionals and abandoning them to managerial practices which don't support them. So I won't put the content. A key resource is the website. The standards are currently available in 5 languages, and the shorter guidance, which is actually ethical guidance aimed at healthcare professionals, is they're going to be there in another 20 languages. That's an ongoing task to get the translations out. And there's other relevant material on the website too. Healthcare confidentiality in European context. If anyone would like, it's only printed in English. If anyone would like to print a copy and doesn't get one, if you just let me know, I'll post you one. So a document like this, it's been interesting how it's been taken up. One would expect data protection authorities to be natural allies, but in fact at the European level they were quite sceptical, I think, largely for political reasons. They don't like people, the Commission doesn't like to lose control, and the data protection authority at the European Commission level, I think felt that we were treading in our territory, so they were quite negative. But at national level, data protection authorities have been very receptive and very positive. They've been involved in translating the standards into national languages, and they've posted them on their websites. The public health sector, which might be, one might expect to be a bit more cautious in terms of wanting to use and access confidential information for public health purposes, has been very positive at a European level, but very sceptical at a national level. So it's the reverse of the data protection authorities have done. Health professional organisations have been very positive, and I think they'll be surprised. They have been working on ethics at a... Okay. I'll just stop there.
Colin, thank you very, very much for your presentation. We come now to the next presentation. The discussion will follow later. This is the presentation of Cosimo Mazzoni, and his topic is collection and protection of genetic data in the European Union.
May I stay here?
Yes.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this really interesting conference, which is a really intercultural, interreligious, interlegislative conference. I am professor of law, and I am particularly interested to the conflicts of law and which is clearly appeared in this conference. I'd like to say some general principle of collection and protection of genetic data in the European Union, and in particular in Italy. So I am following what Mr. Harper said just now, because you have to remind that it is a very peculiar situation that we have in Europe, within the European Union, and in the connection and the interrelationship between the European Union directives and national legislation. And this is the particular position of all the European Union countries. Genetic data are considered by the European law as personal data, and in particular we call it the sensitive data. In fact, the genetic data constitute data that are able to reveal the health condition or the sexual orientation of an individual. This is words of the Council directives on 1995. But what kind of rights we have about our genetic data? Some European scholars have argued that everyone has a sort of intellectual property right over her personal following this way of reasoning, every person might claim an intellectual property data over his genetic data. But this statement does not seem persuading. I believe that even the most appropriate qualification of the personal data was property right, the genetic data would be irrefutably protected not by a property rule, but an inalienability rule. For example, Article 12 of the Directive of the European Union of 1995 described the data subject right of access to personal data, but can a third party access the data banks? And if so, in which cases? European Union members must provide that the controller must implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal data, among the other, against unauthorized disclosure or access. Therefore, the general rule is that the communication and the diffusion are possible only with the previous consent of the data subject. The consent is not necessary if the disclosure is imposed by, for example, statutory duty, if it is necessary for the protection of the health of the data subject, and if he or she is incompetent, and or of a third party if it is made for forensic, scientific, and statistical purposes. The communication of genetic data is not submitted to specific rules other than those is provided for the sensitive data. But it is important to remind that, for example, Italian Data Protection Authority has decided for the first time in Europe a case concerning the access by a third party to the genetic data of an individual. A woman suffering from glaucoma has been authorized to access to the genetic data of her father without his consent in order to protect it to a prenatal diagnosis. As a general principle of another European directive, anyone who starts the treatment of personal data has to notify the National Data Protection Authority before the collection takes place and sign a declaration containing several elements, name, address, purposes, and modalities of the statement, kind of data, place of conservation, and categories of people whom the information is related to what extent the data will be communicated to the third party, and so on. Secondly, the data subject has been informed orally or in written about the purposes and the modality of the treatment, the existence of a duty to communicate the data, the possible consequences of a refusal to answer, the subject whom the data can be communicated to, the right of access to, and the right to rectify the data concerning him, the name and the address of the person responsible for the treatment. And thirdly, as a general principle, the consent of the data subject must be obtained. If the data are able to reveal the health situation of the individual treatment, the so-called sensitive data is subject to some additional requirement. In particular, it is necessary to get permission of the Data Protection Authority. except that the treatment conducive for indispensable therapeutic purposes. For example, in the Italian system, particularly meaningful are the Article 70 of the decree, European decree, where it is provided that the treatment of the genetic data is submitted to the specific authorization of the Protection Data Authority, with the accompanying advice of the Ministry of Health. However, the authorization must not be in any case specific. The authority can release by decree some general authorization. In the year 2000, for instance, in Italy, the authority has issued 7 different authorizations, and among them an authorization to the people that practice a medical profession to process the medical data and, for some purposes, for example, medical treatment with the data project, consent, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentation. We come now to the...
In this presentation, I'm going to speak very briefly about the way in which the European legislation has dealt with the right to privacy and the corresponding duty of confidentiality, especially in relation to medical and genetic data. The concept of privacy is a huge and complex concept and has many meanings. Here I'm going to focus my attention on one of the dimensions of privacy, the so-called informational privacy, that is the interest a person has in controlling access to and use of his or her personal information. This is the aspect of privacy which is most commonly referred to in the discussion about genetic privacy. From a European perspective, we should begin by quoting Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, the article you know, because Colin Harper referred to it before. This article states that everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life, and it adds that there shall be no interference by a public authority with the exercise of this right except for the protection of health or for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. Here we have all the essentials concerning the right to privacy. On the one hand, society must guarantee respect for privacy and as essential to the individual's development. And on the other hand, many limitations are listed in the convention itself, so that privacy is not an absolute but a relative right, in particular the protection of health is mentioned. Furthermore, the right to privacy in relation to health has been established in Article 10 of the Convention on Human Rights and Biomedicine in the following terms: everyone has the right to respect for private life in relation to information about his or her health. And in similar terms, Recommendation 97.5 on the protection of medical data, is a recommendation of the Council of Europe, so as Colin Harper said before, is soft law. This recommendation states that the respect of rights and fundamental freedoms, and in particular of the right to privacy, shall be guaranteed during the collection and processing of medical data. More recently, this sphere of the right to privacy has turned towards a specific right, the right to data protection. Thus, the right to data protection, considered as a right linked but different to the right to privacy, has been recognized at the European level. Article 8 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union recognizes the protection of personal data as the right in itself, when it states that everyone has the right to the protection of personal data concerning him or her. Directive on data protection, the European Directive 95/46, develops this right extensively, and several principles of data protection come from this right, data protection. Among them, I'm going to deal in relation with genetic data with the following ones. Firstly, the principle of self-determination, and secondly, the right of access to information. According to the Article 8.2 of Directive 95/46, the data subject must give his or her explicit consent to the processing of personal data concerning health. And Principle 5 of Recommendation 92.3 on genetic testing and screening for healthcare purposes states that the provision of genetic services should be based on respect for the principle of self-determination of the persons concerned. For this reason, any genetic testing should be subject to the express, free, and informed consent. As for the right of access to information, Articles 10 and 11 of the Directive states that the data subject has a right to receive information. This right is exercised through the so-called right of access, that is, the right to obtain without excessive delay or expense confirmation as to whether or not data relating to one are being processed, and communication in a comprehensible form of data undergoing processing and of any available information as to their source. In the same sense, Recommendation 87/5 states that every person shall be enabled to have access to his or her medical data, and that the information must be accessible in understandable form. By the way, it is important to distinguish the terms privacy and confidentiality. Although they are connected in some sense, they are not synonyms. Privacy is a much broader concept, involving the right to be free from intrusion. And as I mentioned before, it can involve the right to control one's own personal information. Confidentiality, however, is only one means of protecting information, usually in the form of keeping that information protected from disclosure. Actually, we can say that confidentiality is still the standard safeguard to protect privacy and medical information. According to Principle 9 of Recommendation 92.3, persons handling genetic information should be bound by professional rules of conduct in order to prevent the misuse of such information, and in particular by the duty to observe strict confidentiality. In concrete, genetic medicine can give rise to a variety of conflicts of interest. On the one hand, the data subjects have an interest in the protection of their personal data, and on the other hand, certain individuals may show an interest in gaining knowledge or making use of the data which the data subject would like to safeguard. One clear situation of conflict is that between the data subject and his or her blood relatives. In a huge majority of cases, information can be passed on without much difficulty. The data subject himself or herself will agree to inform close family members. But if an individual refuses to inform relatives of any relevant genetic data, then can the doctor inform the interested parties? That's the question, one of the most interesting and important questions in this topic. The Convention on Human Rights and Biomedicine offers no solution to this dilemma. It only provides that provides a general guidance set out in Article 10 in conjunction with Article 26 in the Convention. Article 10 lays down the right to privacy, whereas Article 26 states that there may be exceptions to this right when necessary